Hello, and welcome to Message in the Middle with Marianne. We all know that life is hard, right? It's messy, it's unpredictable, but it can be wonderful all at the same time. My hope is that we can take a deep dive into self-development topics and explore life's lessons through book clubs, conversations, and interviews. And together, we can uncover the lessons that others have already learned to help us navigate this crazy, wonderful ride called life. Hello and welcome to Message in the Middle with Marianne, and today I have Ellie Bassick-Trovato with me. Ellie is a woman's empowerment mentor who's devoted to personal evolution and helping her clients soar. Ellie helps women tap into their limitless potential and elevate their emotions and relationships. She uses a blend of brain science, spirituality, and quantum physics to help her clients transform. Ellie is also a speaker and a best-selling author. Her most recent book is called The Joy Spiral Playbook: Discover the Surprising Path to a Life Filled with Joy. Ellie, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Marianne. I'm really thrilled to be here.
How'd you like that fake bio? Inside joke, guys. It wasn't fake, but we made a joke beforehand that I was going to introduce her as well, a zookeeper. We didn't go there though. So the premise of my show is sort of that life is messy and it's complicated and it's hard.
Oh, yeah.
But that we can also do hard things.
Yeah.
And I think your story certainly ties into all that in how you sort of got here. So can you share that story and your journey and sort of what led you to the New Brave?
Absolutely. Yes. I first of all want to say I think it's such a valuable podcast that you have, because when we can hear other people and their stories and their journeys, it just makes us feel like we're not alone. And it helps us to recognize the possibilities and the pathways before us. And so, yay you for doing it. And thank you so much for connecting with me. So my journey really began, the most relevant part of my journey began, I was married to my husband, and we had my son, who was a year old at the time that my husband was diagnosed with a brain tumor, and he passed away a year later. And it was in facing that challenge that I actually discovered what I'm made of. I knew myself before that to a degree. I had long been into personal growth and development. But when the rubber meets the road like that, there's nothing quite like that for suddenly being galvanized into the force that you know that you are. And so part of that journey is that I had been introduced to a book called Conversations with God years before that. Have you ever read it?
I have not.
It's such a fantastic book. It's not religious. It's a very spiritual book. And it was the first time that I was introduced to the idea that we're always putting energy into the world, and that energy, our thoughts put energy into the world, our words put energy into the world, and then our actions put energy into the world. And that it's actually binary, that every thought, word, and action is either putting the energy of love into the world or putting the energy of fear into the world. And there's something about my brain that really loved how binary it was, because my brain sees all of the gray in life, right? And like the gray of like, well, this makes sense, but this makes sense. And like, how does this all fit together? And getting to see that at its source, I can connect internally and figure out if I am being a force for love or a force for fear, by checking in with my internal thermostat. And if I'm feeling good, I am being a force for love. If I am feeling anything less than the peace that is in me to feel, then there is some part of me that is putting the energy of fear into the world. And so after my husband had been diagnosed, I had that book on my shelf, but I had never fully read it. And I had one of my best friend's ex-husbands came to visit. I still don't remember how we found out. I don't remember anything about it, except that he came to visit and he said, "You need to read the book Conversations with God." And I said, well, I have that on my shelf. That's funny. I had read a couple chapters, but then got distracted by, 10 other books on my shelf. And so I pulled it out and it just felt like home to me. It just made so much sense. I had long had the sense that I was a spiritual person, but I had not yet been introduced to a religion that spoke to me. Every time I tried on a religion, it was like, I like this, but I don't like this. It was sort of like putting on an itchy sweater. It's like, I don't know. There's something about this that isn't quite right. And so when I read the book Conversations with God, I was like, this just fits. This just resonates for me so deeply. And I ended up, that book was so central to how I handled my husband's illness and death and how my husband handled his illness and our family. It was pivotal for us. And it was the decision that we would do everything we could to come from a place of love as we handled that challenge. And that changed who I was. It changed what I was capable of. And so after my husband passed away, when I was trying to figure out like what's next, I had taken the year off to be with my son for a year after he was born. I was a 7th grade English teacher before that and had actually a lot of different careers, but that had been my most recent one. And in trying to decide what's next, I was reading the book, Wayne Dyer's book, The Power of Intention. And I realized I want to put books like this, like Conversations with God, into people's hands. And so I created a wellness center in honor of my husband and my dad, who passed away within 2 months of my husband. And then there were just, I could tell you story after story that would just have your hair standing on end about all of the signs from the universe that I was on the right track and everything. Absolutely outstanding. One of them, I'll tell you, is that I decided to open the store, a wellness center, a brick and mortar wellness center with healing arts, books, sidelines, events, and a cafe.
All of that?
I don't know why I thought it was a good idea to open a wellness center with 4 different businesses under one roof, basically. But I decided to open it on my father's birthday in honor of him, which was October 20th. And after I made that decision, I found out that the book Conversations with God had been made into a movie, and they were launching it on what date?
I got goosebumps.
I know. Isn't that amazing?
Yes.
On October 20th. So not only that, but they were launching it not to theaters, but to small bookstores like my own. So the opening of this place that existed because of that book, during that opening weekend, I was showing that movie to my customers.
Wow.
And that was just the first in a long line of amazing things that happened, all surrounding that idea of the book and me creating that wellness center. And then years ago, I had the wellness center for about 8 years, and it still exists. But years later, it became clear to me, I want this place to be a beacon for health and wellness. And yet I'm driving myself into the ground. And that's not going to help it be a beacon for health and wellness. I was in the little back office, no windows, it was a complex business, trying to make the schedule work and this and the QuickBooks and all of this stuff work. And I was playing my C game and driving myself into the ground with a young child at home. And so eventually I made the decision, it's time to sell. I wanted to be with the people out front. I didn't want to be doing all of the detail work and everything else. I wanted to be the person. My A game is interacting with people. My A game is coaching people, helping them to evolve in their own experience of life, helping to empower them. I wasn't doing that in the back office. And so I sold it. And that's when I officially became a coach. And I had always sort of unofficially been a coach.
So I don't believe in coincidences. And to your point, all those synchronicities that showed up in your life. Crazy, right? But I think when we're open to looking for them, they're there all the time.
Yes, I 100% agree.
Right? And I think they get even more present when we start becoming in alignment with our true selves. I try to avoid the word purpose because it kind of throws people, right? What is my purpose? But I think when we start to really lean into who we are and do what we were really made to do, and we're feeling that, yeah, I feel like they just show up everywhere. And so the experience that you had, that gave me goosebumps. And I think it was phenomenal. I also think, sort of on that same line of, leaning in and finding what you're truly made to do, when you started to really grow the business and get more tied up in the back end of it, I think it was fabulous that you were able to listen to your intuition, your instinct, your knowing. This isn't where I should be. This isn't where I'm in my A game. This isn't my best self. And I think we often miss that. So what made that connect for you? Do you remember? Were you just so frustrated? Was there something that made the light bulb go off?
That's a good question. It was, I'm trying to reconstruct, history from years ago now. But for me, as unequivocally clear as it was that I was doing the right thing to start it, it became abundantly clear that it was time to step away. So it felt like one Mack truck after another just coming and rolling over me. And then I'd kind of stand up again. I'd be like, okay. And then the next thing would come down the pike. And it was just these messages that felt like from the universe.
Yeah.
It's time to move on. It's time for this to be somebody else's. And it was a matter, I don't think I was really listening at first. I wasn't, we're not taught that, we in our generation, we're not taught that self-care thing.
Yes.
We were not taught to tune into our bodies. We were not taught to figure out what our truth is, right? It was somebody's idea of truth and right behavior that we were kind of trying to live up to. And it took quite a while for me to tune into my own inner essence and be like, yeah, no, life is not meant to feel like this. And I would like to believe that I would be a lot faster to notice it now. But the truth is, I had invested years of blood, sweat, tears, and money to create that. And to walk away from that felt gigantic. And so I think the universe had to just kind of keep bringing things along that were gigantic in of their own accord for me to be like, okay, wait a second. Am I really doing the right thing?
Yeah.
And it's so much easier to see when we've got, if I have a client who's going through something like that, it's easy to see it when you're on the outside of it looking in. I'm very grateful that I had some beautiful friends, one in particular who was right there by my side and who was able to kind of point out that mirror of is this really the way this is meant to be? I remember there was one moment I was the schedule was complex and this was happening and that was happening. And I was tearing my hair out and really frustrated. And she was like, Ellie, you need to take a walk. And I was like, I don't have time for a walk. And there's
your sign.
That's my sign. It's both the sign that it's time to make a change. And it's also flat out wrong because we don't ever not have time to take the walk. There is nothing more important. It doesn't mean I needed to go for a 45-minute walk. I was saying I didn't have time to get up out of my chair and walk around the building once on the outside.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. And that just means that we're bearing down on something so hard, thinking the answer is here, thinking we've got to figure it out. And it's all about the doing and we're all up in our head. And her reflection for me was no, you got to take the walk. That's when the inspiration comes through. That's when the brain is able to switch out of that gear. You're in the problem energy or you're in the solution energy. And then when you're stuck down here, I know I'm pointing and people can't see me, but when you're stuck down here in the problem energy, you can't see the solution.
Yeah.
And I kind of love that happened because it's been very effective to be able to use that as a story to guide myself and to guide my clients as well, that we've got to have that space in our lives for ourselves, for our self-care, and also for those synchronicities to be able to happen, and for the thought to drop in from what I believe is the divine, but whatever you believe it is, the universe, God, source, love, whatever it is, there is an energy field that connects us all. And this energy is always looking to move through us. It is a pure love, unconditional energy. And it is always looking to move through us to extend into the world. It's never not there. We are sometimes not aware that it's there because we're so pinched off. It's like a faucet that we've turned the faucet off. And it's like, all this inspiration and all this knowledge and wisdom and depth is wanting to come through each and every one of us, bar none. The only question is whether or not we're willing to open the faucet and give it space. And if we're so caught up in the doing and figuring it out with our human brain, we're missing so much magic that's out there.
I think the core message that I got there that, just keeps coming through over and over and over is get out of your head.
Yeah.
I mean, not to super simplify it, but I do think we all struggle so much with being in our head. And that's a lot of the conversations we have about noticing that and starting to change that, because, noticing is obviously the first step, but it's something that so many of us have done for so long that even learning to notice it really is a big first step, right? But then you can start going beyond that. But I think all of what you said is taking that walk, taking that step away, getting out of that problem. It's such a difference between being stuck in your head and then coming out from your head and being in your body and then opening up to the other potential possibilities out there.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah. If we're too head heavy, the heart doesn't have space. And it's really the heart that is available for us to see the world through in a very different way. Like in The Little Prince, when it says, it is only with the heart that one can see rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye. I love that line. That's always spoken to me, even before my spiritual journey.
Yeah. Yeah. Good stuff. Well, talking about sort of the heart and getting out of your head, it leads me to your book. The Joy Spiral Playbook is something that you were passionate about. You wanted to put it out there for the world so that it could be a tool that others could use. And I'm just coming off doing a series about rest and play and fun and joy and trying to figure out how we get better at that. Because one of the things that I also think is a theme for women our age is, our age-ish, is that we forgot how to have fun. We forgot how to live from a place of joy. We're so busy doing, so busy being in our head that doesn't come easy. So can you share a little bit about your book? And I feel like it goes along those lines and we're in alignment there, but share a little bit of that message for me, will you?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I call it the Joy Spiral Playbook, the surprising path to a life filled with joy, because it's not necessarily what somebody who isn't on this path would expect. And the spiral, the idea of the spiral is that there's 8 different levels that I've identified that have helped me to access my own joy and helped my clients to access their own joy. And so when we unlock each one of those levels, we have, imagine the spiral getting bigger and bigger as you go, you have more and more access to your joy. Now, the very first level is remember who you are. And by that, I don't mean remember that you're Marion and I'm Ellie and you live here and I live here. I mean, remember who you are. We are like an acorn that has it in us to grow into an oak tree. But if we sit there thinking that the acorn is all that we are, we'll never stretch and grow to our capacity. And so from my perspective, we are sparks of the divine. We are part of this incredible energy that moves through the universe. And we are so much more than this body. This body is this earth suit that we're moving around space and time with, having the experience that we're having. And the point of this body, from my perspective and this experience, is for us to evolve and grow, to remember the truth of who we are. So it's an ongoing evolution. Many of us say, I'm a spiritual being having a physical experience. And that is 100% true from my perspective. And yet it's easy to say it and not feel it. And it's easy to say it and believe it one moment, but then get caught up about this grudge, this upset, this whatever in the next moment, this worry in the next moment. And so it's sort of like this, we're in it and we kind of know what we're after, but do we really get it? Do we really get the truth of who we are? And so we start with getting the truth of who we are, which is a spiritual being having a physical experience, but it is so much bigger than that. It is, we are like, if you think of a sunbeam to the sun, if you think of the divine as the sun, and you think of us each as sunbeams, each of us equivalent to each other, each of us has magic in us. And I believe that we, each and every one of us, have in us the light of 1,000 suns. And it's up to us to learn how to shine them. And so we remember who we are as the first level. And then we start to recognize this difference between the love and the fear think, because our society teaches us to think along the lines of fear. And our brains have a bias to negativity, which I'm sure most of your listeners have heard before. That threads through each and every thought we have in the day, each and every story we make up about what's happening in our lives, each and every meaning that we give, each and every belief that we have, each and every, whether we are more along the lines of love think, as I call it, or fear think, dramatically affects the experience we're going to have in life. And so I give tools and in metaphors and games for leaning more in the direction of love think, which brings us more to our freedom, which brings us more to that inner truth, which is we are joy. So it's this distinction between outside in joy. Let me find more things outside to make me joyful. Outside in joy is circumstantial joy. Something happens out there. I get married, I have a baby, something joyful happens and I get to feel joy. This book is about inside out joy. It's about remembering the truth of who we are, living from that place, retraining our brains so that our experience of life is one where we're bringing the joy. We bring the intention of this is who I am. It's just my truth. So this glass can bring me joy. And that plant can bring me joy. It doesn't have to be some giant thing. It's a thought that could bring me joy, a memory that could bring me joy. And so the book is all about training your mind to think along the path of joy, to go back to the truth of who you are, which has been washed out of us from life and culture and families. And, nobody did it on purpose. Everybody's just passing down their way of seeing the world. But now we've got a choice point, and the book helps you to recognize the choice point and then really springboard forward in your journey to experiencing more joy, which comes with more inner peace, which comes with more love, which comes with more connection, and all those things.
People really struggle with this, with the ability to connect back to who they really are. I think it's one of the things that, the coaching industry has really boomed, and that's one of the main reasons the coaching industry has really boomed, is that I think people get to be about our age and they start to go, how did I get here? And who am I? And what am I doing? What am I going to do with the rest of my days? Right. And I think I call it the unlearning, and I didn't coin that obviously, but this big unlearning phase that we're going in to try to unlearn all of that stuff you mentioned that we were sort of programmed with. What do you think from your experience is the hardest thing for people to really shed so that they can get past that and connect back to who they really are?
The pattern that I see the most is a question of our worthiness.
Yeah.
And that plays out in a lot of different ways. But it's like we question whether we're worthy of joy. We question whether we're so busy sort of proving our worth to the world. We're so busy being the nice person, being the person who takes care of everybody, that we don't recognize that, honestly, that is not the most effective way to make sure that everybody in the world is taken care of. And so it's almost the sense of martyrdom is what it becomes. Like, no, 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 I'm not going to take time for my own joy and my own self-care because that would be selfish, or because I'm not worthy, or because that's meant for other people and not for me. We have all of these stories about joy. And interestingly, when the book first came out, I was doing some free phone calls with people that were joy springboard calls. And I walked people through a process. It's a really powerful belief retraining process, a subconscious reprogramming process. And I had them talk about joy in this process. And the things that came up that they currently believed about joy, when we unlocked the subconscious mind and what it had to say about joy, was like, no wonder we don't have more of it, because we've got these underlying beliefs that it's selfish, that it's for other people, that I don't have time for it, that it's, like so many stories about it. And so, yeah, I think the answer to that question for me and my experience with all of my clients would be, it's questioning our worthiness, our deservingness of A, joy, B, self-care, C, things that feel good, D, being able to speak our mind about things, E, being able to take up space in the world in a confident way.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
that resonates with me because I can relate to all of those feelings and all of those thoughts. So I do think that for a lot of us, the I'm too busy, and that equates to your point, just trying to show the world that you can do it all, be it all, whatever it is. It's all those external factors you're trying to accomplish, right?
Yeah.
And not making time for it because you don't think you have time.
And to that point, if I could just play off of that for a second and say that if we think we're too busy for joy, what we're actually saying is that we're too busy to bring the energy of the pure essence of love to the world. No, 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 I have to do this thing. And I have this on my calendar and this on my calendar, and I have to go grocery shopping, and I have to do this, and I have to do this, and I have to do this. We think that if we do enough of those things, then we might get to have the experience of I feel worthy. But in actuality, the way to experience our worthiness is to decide that we're worthy of joy, that literally nothing could be more important than that we live as our highest light in the world. And that requires a willingness to cultivate the truth in us, the connection to the truth in us. And I believe that it's like we're all God-godding. We're all the divine, walking around here on earth. If I have it in me to extend the love of all that is into the world, and I think that it's more important that I do something that my little separate brain thinks is more important, I have the equation a little bit backwards. Like all that is, and I can channel that energy into the world as long as I am aligned with my peace, my joy, my truth. But no, I'm going to put that to the side. No, thank you. And instead, I'm going to hold on to the idea that these little things that I'm up to in my world are more important than that incredible energy that we could be bringing to the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for giving me a little opportunity to be on my soapbox.
No, but seriously, I mean, yes, right? That is true, but I don't think you see it in the moment or in the stuckness that we all get in, right? The stuckness in the subjective thinking, right? It's to your point at the very start of our discussion, you had somebody sort of mirror back to you where the state you were in. It's similar. I think again, we get to this age, we start looking around, but when you just start doing the work, you're not there yet. I don't think all that is so obvious, right? You don't even realize that you're doing those things. Mm-hmm. And it's that unlearning. You have to kind of peel back the onion to get to that place. It's fascinating to me, but it's deep. I mean, it's a lot. All of these concepts, all of the ones we talk about, they're simple in and of themselves. But they're not easy.
No, they're not easy.
They're not easy.
No,
but they're simple to get, to understand logically.
Yeah.
But it's just so many years of programming to then undo those thoughts and to walk in a different way.
Yeah. And it's decades of that conditioning and those neural pathways doing what they've been doing for all of that time. And it's become automatic. Yeah. And that was one of the fascinations for me as I watched my husband battle his brain tumor. It was in the prefrontal cortex, and how he changed and what his capabilities were and how they changed. So that's why I bring this brain science into my work so much, and it's so important. And I think your point about unlearning is a super valid, super important point. And I would add to it that if we stay, there's a, how do I want to say this? It's like, I want to recognize that I have all of these energetic cords and tentacles that are holding me into a fear-based paradigm of the world. And I want to have a willingness to unlearn, as in let go of some of those. But I also want to make sure that I'm not so focused in that direction that I'm not actually creating the new way of thinking, because there is an unlearning, but then there is the upgraded learning.
Yeah.
And so I think what happens sometimes is people get stuck in the, oh, wait, I have got to do this shadow work and then this and then this and then this and then this. And then we're still facing the shadow. We're still facing the fear. It still has our attention. It's still grabbing onto us, and we're in resistance to what was. But when we intentionally create a new thought system, then automatically some of that old stuff falls away. And yeah, there's some work to be done in the unlearning, but it's the, what would the opposite be? Not the opposite, but there's the unlearning, but then there's the expanded learning, the new learning.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. And I think that's a super valid point, and haven't really talked about that position before, but it's super valid. And when I think about it, I do think to me, I think the unlearning is so critical, because I think if you don't recognize all those patterns and all that stuff, that bucket of stuff that you're stuck in, for me, I think on all of these fronts, no matter what you're trying to do, whether it's grow a business, lose weight, change jobs, create a better relationship, there's stuff that you have there from all of that, the years and years and years. And you need to sort of peel that away and understand how to retrain some of those thoughts, to your point, right? But I do think, yes, you can't live the next 50 years catching yourself and then going, oh no, I have to think that differently. You definitely want to start building that new way.
Absolutely. Yeah. So there's three things that I would suggest. One is make it a priority to study joy. We study pain all the time. We study our upset, our worry. We just perseverate on it. We focus on it. We suffer. But how many people study joy? How many people study inner peace? And so the first thing I would say is study joy, invite it in, pay attention to who's joyful, watch what they're doing, watch what they're about, read my book, read other books about joy, get yourself around people who build evidence in your world of joy and what that looks like as more a part of your day-to-day experience. So that's the first one that I would say. The next one is there's a game that I play that's called Mountains and Molehills. And in my book, there's tons of what I call joy activators that are part of this joy mind training. When you make a commitment that you're going to study joy, you make a commitment that every day, some part of your day is going to be spent on cultivating inner peace and joy. And so there's all of these joy activators inside the Joy Spiral Playbook. One of them is called Mountains and Molehills. And what I do is I have you take an experience in your life that was painful and set a timer and write for 3 minutes about the experience with as many details as you can fit into it. And give yourself a number on a scale of 1 to 10, like how much pain and suffering you're in about the story before you write and then after you write. So you write for 3 minutes about the painful thing, and then you stop, and then you set the timer for 1 minute. And then you write about the painful thing again, and then give yourself a number again. What we're doing is we're intentionally taking what we generally make into a mountain, which is our pain, and we're making it into a molehill instead. So if I were doing it and maybe telling the story about my husband's brain tumor, if I were telling it in 3 minutes, there's a lot of detail that I could get into about it. I could really create a lot of the painful emotions about it. But if I'm saying it in 10 seconds or 1 minute, there's far fewer details that I can get into. It's much more sort of factual in nature. And so the point of this is to recognize our focus and how we affect how we're going to feel. Because you give yourself a number on a scale of 1 to 10, how much pain you're in before you start. Then after you do it for 3 minutes, then when you do it for 1 minute instead. And generally speaking, what you'll see is the number is much higher when you allow the pain story to be a mountain. Now, that's not to say that there aren't times when we need to actually allow ourselves to feel the pain and to tell the story. It's just when it's years later and we're just hauling it around with us, that's when we want to recognize, wait a second, I have a choice. It could be even a week later after something painful happened. I have a choice in how much detail I go into about this. And so that's taking a mountain and making it into a molehill. And then we want to play with the opposite energy and take a molehill and making it into a mountain. So if I were to tell a story about the first time when I knew that I was in love with my husband, and if I were to tell it in 1 minute and then give myself on a scale of 1 to 10, how much joy does it bring if I tell it in 1 minute? And then set the timer again and tell the story in 3 minutes and really bring back the details. So take what typically we let our joys and our happiness and our peace be like a little molehill. And you take that and you intentionally make it into a mountain, and then write for 3 minutes about it. And then as you're bringing the joyful thing more to life, then rate on a scale of 1 to 10 how much joy you've experienced in the telling of the story. So that's mountains to molehills and joy training. And you know what? That was probably longer than I was anticipating it was going to be. So maybe we'll leave it there. But those are a couple of the tools and the techniques that you can play with. And then there's tons more inside the book.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I can see just in the short minute while you were talking, I was kind of running through a scenario. I can see how that might work.
It is my pleasure. Yeah, that's a great joy mind training activity. And if you practice that every day for a while, you're going to start to train your brain to pay a lot more attention to the details about the joy and less about the pain.
So as we wrap up, do you have any quick hits obviously your book goes into a lot of details and all these different layers to create that spiral of joy. But do you have any sort of quick hits that you could throw out there to help our listeners as they start to reframe their thoughts and try to move into that space of real understanding and remembering of who they were so that they can get more aligned in joyful living?
Yes, I actually have two resources that are really helpful for that. One is that I have a free private Facebook group. It's called the Luminosa Playground. And in that, I actually every weekday morning have what I call a Luminosa ritual. A Luminosa is a name that I've given our higher self. And the Luminosa ritual is about activating that higher self. And so it's actually, we do readings during that ritual. It's a beautiful opportunity to tune into reminders about the truth of who you are. When you have somebody pouring that energy into you, it helps you to start to activate it more and more. What we generally have poured into us is the fear and the death and the mayhem and the upset that's all around us. And so to get super intentional and say, you know what? I want the truth poured into me. I want the light poured into me so that is more activated in me to share with others. So that's one of the resources. And then the other one is that I am a student of and a guide for A Course in Miracles. A Course in Miracles is a spiritual path that has 365 daily lessons, and it develops that core of unshakable inner peace. And the miracle that's referred to in A Course in Miracles is the choice for love over fear. And that choice is available to us in every single moment of our lives. And as you indicated before, it's a matter first of noticing. We can't change anything if we don't even recognize what's going on. But when we notice, and then we have the chance to choose love over fear, that's when our life expands, because love over fear is expansion over contraction. It's trust over worry. It's generosity. It's flexibility. It's creativity. It's it's patience, it's kindness, it's all of those things. And we have a tendency to go in the other direction. And so A Course in Miracles, which I would recommend that you get a hold of it and you start doing the lessons in A Course in Miracles. And I will tell you, so many people, myself included, when they first try to make their way through A Course in Miracles on their own, don't get very far because it's a very new way of thinking. And so that's why I became a guide for A Course in Miracles. And I have a program that can guide people through A Course in Miracles. But whether it is, so people can reach out to me for information about that. But whether it is A Course in Miracles per se, or my book, or whatever it is, it's having a training system that you hear the truth poured into you, and it connects with the truth that is somewhere in there. And there's an inner part of you that goes, wait, what? It like wakes up, and it's like a little sleepy, a bear coming out of hibernation. It's like stretching and like, looking at the world around in a very different way. And so it's prioritizing. We've had decades of conditioning of moving in a different direction, of being immersed in a fear-based paradigm. And so if you were to imagine, if I had a glass of cranberry juice, and that represents the negative thinking in our brain, the fear-based paradigm that is our go-to right now. And then you were to imagine that I'm pouring a glass of pure water into that other glass. I'm diluting that red cranberry juice. And if I pour enough in, then that red cranberry juice isn't even going to be there anymore. So it's intentionally inviting in that clarity to wash your brain, to upgrade your operating system, because you don't have to be in pain. You don't have to be suffering. And joy is your birthright.
Joy is your birthright. We've been hearing that a few times lately, something I think we don't think about innately, but we need to get back to. So thanks for the reminder. And I really love the analogy of the bear, because I feel like I've been coming out of that hibernation state for, I don't know, a year and a half or so now, maybe 2. And it feels great, that stretching, that realizing, and that really starting to look at things differently. So it's a great analogy for people to visualize. This has been such a fascinating conversation. I really appreciate your time. I know you have tons of links, and I'm going to share them with everybody, including that Facebook group you mentioned. Is there any one place that you are most often on or most visible that people should connect with?
That's a great question. The name of my company is The New Brave Co. And so I'm on Instagram and becoming more and more active on there. I'm also on Facebook as my personal name, Ellie Bassick-Trovato, and as the business, The New Brave Co. And the place that I am most often is probably the Luminosa Playground, that Facebook group. So I know that link is one of the things there, and anybody can jump in there at any time and be as much a part of it as they choose to be. They can be a quiet bystander, or they can jump in and participate. So it's a really beautiful entry point into my world. And I would also say that the book is a beautiful entry point into my world. And I know the link is going to be in the show notes, and it's a PDF, and there's also an audio version, I should say. And that's read by me, and people love taking that for a walk with their dog and listening to it while they're folding laundry and driving and doing all kinds of things like that. And then I would say my favorite program that I run is called the Light Year, which is a year of full-on transformation where we rewire your brain, upgrade your operating system, change your relationships, change your emotions, and help you come from an incredibly empowered place in life. So people can also reach me at ellie@thenewbrave.com if they want to talk about what feels like the right fit for them.
That's great. So it sounds like there's many entry points and at different levels, and you can meet people where they are and what they're ready for, which is always important. So yes. Reminder, guys, it's the Joy Spiral Playbook. Discover the surprising path to a life filled with joy. And Ellie, thanks again so much. We'll put everything out there, and hopefully we'll be in touch again soon.
Amazing. I so appreciate this opportunity. I love your voice. I love your energy. I love what you're up to in the world. And I'm so happy to be connected with you.
Aw, thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode of Message in the Middle with Marianne. If you enjoyed the podcast, please take a minute to share it and write a review, as it helps bring new listeners to our audience. If you'd like to keep the conversation going between episodes, please join us at Facebook group Message in the Middle with Marianne.